Let's keep on looking back, guys, this time in the NFL. Last week, we kicked around the best Super Bowl team of the decade. Both teams mentioned had extremely stout defenses, but were they the best of the decade? Ravens, Seahawks, Eagles, Broncos, and Patriots have all had some excellent defensive units in their Super Bowl run, and some teams who have fell short still had exceptionally good units on that side of the ball. But who is the best? Drink, who do you have for the best defense of the 2010 decade?
Well, let me tell you something. For all my watchers, for all my listeners, that watch our show, you heard what I said last week. How this defense was nastier than Kool-Aid with no sugar. Well, let me tell you something. I got another one for my early YouTubers. I'm just gonna say this defense was nasty, and I'm gonna say 2 girls and 1 cup. You Google that. You decide how you want to go with that. But once you watch the video, you'll get the reference. Here's the deal. Let me go ahead and let you know a little something.
Other personnel on this panel do not endorse that statement. Just want to let y'all know.
Yeah, we know here individual, but I said it, so there's no point. Anyway, so let me hit you off with something that I don't do a lot. I actually dug into the stats on this one. I usually don't have to do that because I know what I see and I see what I know. But here's the deal. This defense, the 2013 Seattle Seahawks, number 1 in the NFL for points against. All right. Number 1 in the NFL for total points throughout the whole season. Number 1 in the NFL for points allowed per game. Number 1 in the NFL for passing yards allowed per game. Number 1 in the NFL for total yards allowed per game. Number 8 in the NFL for rushing yards allowed per game. And number 1 in the NFL with turnovers made. Now, that's the team acclimates. Oh yeah, by the way, let me give Dan Quinn a little shine. He was a defensive coach. This what got him the Atlanta job that he might be losing this season if they don't go ahead and shape up, but that's neither here nor there. They had 2 first-team All-Pro, Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman, on that team. They had a total of 4 Pro Bowlers if you add in Cam Chancellor and Cam Chancellor, and I had Russell Wilson, but he was on the offense side of the ball. Sorry about that. But they had those 2 Pro Bowlers, all right? Then they had Bobby Wagner. Now, Bobby Wagner, he was a Pro Bowler. He had 120 total tackles, 72 solo, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions. He had a very remarkable season. Now, I want to say, when we talk about the Legion of Boom, I think those linebackers don't get the real just due that they deserve for their defense. I think we tend to look at, the back end, the cornerbacks, the safeties. But let me tell you something. Bobby Wagner, Bruce Irvin, them guys was out there balling. They was balling. But, I'm trying to keep the script. You got Richard Sherman that year. Like I said, he was the first-team All-Pro. He had 8 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries. Earl Thomas. Now, when I looked at these stats, he had 5 interceptions on the season. Maybe it was just a down year for safeties. Earl Thomas is good, don't get me wrong. But when I looked at his stats, he was first-team All-Pro. And I'm like, I just thought he was going to give me more. I really did. I just figured from the free safety spot, he was going to give me more. 5 interceptions, I guess that's good for a free safety. I don't know, but, he was first-team All-Pro, so I'm going to let that go. And then my guy, the hitter, the thumper, Mr. I'll knock your numbers off myself, Cam Chancellor rolling through, 99 total tackles and 3 interceptions. So I say all that to say this because I felt like I already answered this question already. That defense was phenomenal. And like I said, this defense went against the number 1 offense in the NFL. Let's keep that in mind. They didn't go against the, number 11 offense. They went against a GOAT in the quarterback position that year. I ain't talking like, the Panthers got an old washed up Peyton Manning. No. The Seahawks got a good Peyton Manning with a good Demaryius Thomas and a good C.J. Anderson. What happened in the game is what happened, but all those players was good that year. They was in that. What happened, later on down the road, Peyton Manning, eroded. Demaryius Thomas won himself. Julius Thomas stayed hurt all the time. C.J. Anderson kind of got overweight and he got slow. All that kind of transpired afterwards. But at this present time, during this era, Seattle got the best they could throw, and they was just like, that's all you got. You hit like a boop, and they kept it rolling. So that's my defense right there. Over you.
Yeah, that was yeah, we saw that coming. That was nice. Listen, it's
Well, I said it was coming last week, so it wasn't really
Yeah.
nothing to see coming.
Right.
But I did say it was coming last week.
yeah, that's right. And look, I don't think this is we're talking about. I'm going with the 2015 Broncos. Let me just get out the way. When we talk about these are two exceptional defense, and I think if you look at defenses throughout this decade, I think these are definitely the two that come to mind immediately. And at this point, when I look at these two defenses, you're kind of splitting hairs, and it goes down to kind of preference. What do you prefer in a defense? And you're absolutely right. The Seahawks, number one in points, number one in yards, number one in pass defense, and a lot of this, it has to do with brand. When you think of the Seattle Seahawks and this defense, you think of, the Legion of Boom. That's what they were known as. And most of that leans back to that secondary there that they had. The Broncos had their own defensive moniker thing. They were known as a no-fly zone for a couple years. But you think about that brand that they had was not as strong as what the Seahawks had back in 2013, and it lived on for a little bit before Cam Chancellor got old, Earl Thomas got hurt, eventually left. Richard Sherman, he's now a 49er. That they kind of broke up. And the same thing with the Broncos. No-fly zone didn't last all that long. But I'm looking at this 2015 Bronco team, and I'm going with them. And I think the only positional group that I would give the Seattle Seahawks a definitive edge is at the safeties. I would take Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor over Darian Stewart and T.J. Ward. I really would. And when you look at the cornerback position, that you can make a great argument for Richard Sherman. You can make a great argument for him over Chris Harris, over Aqib Talib. But when you talk about a cornerback duo, when I put Aqib Talib and Chris Harris together, there's no contest. Well, are you going to give me Byron Maxwell? You're going to give me Brandon Browner? Come on, guys. These are posers. These are not. We saw it when Byron Maxwell left Seattle and went to Philadelphia. It was a joke. And don't get me started with Brandon Browner. This guy was just a professional mug artist. There is nothing when you look at with Brandon Browner that should be considered pass coverage. This guy just got up at the line of scrimmage and just assaulted people so they couldn't get down the field. But, hey, listen, other positional groups, you mentioned Bobby Wagner, Bruce Irvin. You can probably throw KJ Wright in there as well. Can't forget about Malcolm Smith, won the Super Bowl MVP in that Super Bowl. This is a good group. But I'm going to tell you, I think an underrated group for Denver is their inside linebacker, Trevathan and Brandon Marshall. These guys, smart, fast, excellent in the pass coverage game. And they're two guys that when you watch this defense on tape, they make things happen. Sideline to sideline, covering running backs and tight ends. They can make it happen. And then the real separation where I have on these defense is in the pass rush game. When you talk about this Denver Bronco pass rush, what they could do. If I told you I could give you DeMarcus Ware, Malik Jackson, Derek Wolfe, and Von Miller, I don't think there's any argument there. Now, the Seahawks has some good players, and their pass rushers were rotational guys. Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill didn't start a lot of games for this team. These guys, they use them primarily in third down situations. Second down. These guys for them played every down. First, second, third down. And then, oh, by the way, the depth that they had at pass rusher behind DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller. Can I introduce you to Shaq Barrett? The same Shaq Barrett that just led the NFL in. This was a reserve for the Broncos who started some games when DeMarcus Ware was out with injury. And I can tell you, Shaq Barrett's a talented guy. I'm surprised that Denver didn't make a greater effort at keeping him. But I've known for many years that this guy could play. It's no surprise what he's doing now. And Shane Ray, he was a solid rotational player. I don't think he ever quite lived up to his first-round draft stock. But this defense, all in all, outside of the safeties, Denver is equal or better than what I saw from Seattle. But I just think some of it is narrative. Some of it is the brand that the Seahawks has. But when you watch the tape, the 2015 Broncos are every bit as impressive as the 2013 Seahawks. And here's some more numbers. One of the things that we got to be careful on when we talk about defense is scoring defense, because that goes hand in hand with what your offense is doing. And when we look at the offenses for these two teams, the Seattle Seahawks had a much better offense, and in the biggest way is how they protected the ball. The Denver Broncos in this season of 2015, they were third in the NFL in giveaways. They gave the ball away 31 times. In comparison to Seahawks in 2013, they gave the ball away 19 times. So what that did for the Seahawks is their defense was primarily never in bad position, and that led to them being able to lead the league in scoring defense. Meanwhile, Denver and Seattle plus 20 in turnover differential in 2013. This 2015 Broncos defense, despite being seventh in the NFL at takeaways with 27, they were -4 in turnover differential. A Super Bowl champion team with a negative turnover differential because Peyton Manning was cooked. That's just what it was. He wasn't the same. He couldn't get it done like he used to. And still, even with that being said, the Broncos were still the fourth best scoring defense. If Peyton Manning had just protected the ball they would have been number one in scoring defense as well. And back to the pass rush point, the Broncos in 2015, 52 sacks, first in the NFL. Their sack percentage, 8.3%. That was first in the NFL. Compared to Seattle, 44 sacks. That was tied for eighth. And their pressure percentage was 7.7%, fifth. Still very good, but not as elite as what the Denver Broncos were doing. And last point to what these guys did in the playoffs. You lean heavy on what they did at the Super Bowl, the Seahawks. Rightfully so. Impressive, number one scoring offense. I think they're the best offense of all time. They averaged 37 points in the regular season, that 2013 Broncos offense. But in the divisional round, in the championship round, they beat the 10th best scoring offense in New Orleans and the 11th best scoring offense in San Francisco, who I believe was quarterbacked by Alex Smith. Pretty good offenses, and especially I know the Saints were 10th, but that was still a Drew Brees, Sean Payton offense. The Denver Broncos in 2015, the fourth-ranked scoring offense in Pittsburgh, the third-ranked scoring offense in New England, and the first-ranked scoring offense in Carolina. I'm going with the Denver Broncos.
All right. So, where did the Carolina Panthers rank in all these numbers? Total offense, or I know they were number one in rushing.
They were first. They were first in rushing. They were first in scoring offense.
Oh, okay. But what was that in passing?
That they were not first. I can tell you that.
I know you could tell me that.
They were not as good as the 2013 Broncos. Absolutely right. They did have the MVP though.
Yeah, that was predominant a runner. So stats sound good, but you know what I'm saying. I just know it's kind of like.
So now we're saying,
like, hold on. It's kind of like when you watch a heavyweight fight, and then it's 1 versus 2, and they coming in now. The two get credit for fight number 1, not fight number 8. So when you compare these numbers, some of them don't sound as even. I mean, of course, you're gonna bend the numbers in your favor. That's how the debate goes. But of course, like. These numbers, some of them just not sounding as even as they should. But, you know, I don't expect you to give me the upper hand. So I don't blame you for that.
I will say this. And again, I just told you that first-ranked scoring offense of the Carolina Panthers, it was nowhere near as good as that Bronco offense that Seattle shut down in that 2013 Super Bowl. I'm giving you that. But I think we're being a little bit unfair to Cam Newton now. Because we've said that Cam
Newton was unfair to Cam Newton in that Super Bowl.
You have said Cam Newton only had one good season, which was 2015, when he was an MVP, when he threw 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And now we're not even going to give Denver credit for what they did to him in that Super Bowl.
I didn't say Denver don't get no credit. I just
But
said I
just
felt
not as
like
much credit as Seattle does.
Seattle climbed the higher mountain. You ask anybody that. Seattle climbed the higher mountain.
Pound for pound, that Denver Broncos defense
you like
just
to remind
as good
me,
as Seattle.
and you like to remind me who did Cam Newton have to throw to? I mean, Peyton Manning, he was a Pro Bowler, and he threw it to like at least two other Pro Bowlers off the top of my head. Like, you the one. Your word is, oh, Cam Newton ain't have nobody, so that's why he wasn't that good. So who did he throw to? Why? How impressive was that team offensively?
That makes the MVP award all that more impressive.
For Cam Newton, I guess. The rest of the team, whatever.
He still can't get a job though, by the way.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I feel like the host on the First Take when Max and Stephen A are yelling, and I'm just kind of sitting here like,
Well, yeah. I mean, we gonna start breaking character. I'm keen to that. We can do it.
It's good.
I'm all about it.
I
talk some shit. That's for sure. We can do that.
Looking back at all the 2010s defenses, and I think these are the two. They're 1 and 2 in some respect. I think that you look at the Patriots had a lot of good defenses, but you also you always asterisk them because of how well they were coached. And I could throw in the 2017 Jaguars. Actually, when I looked it up, I didn't expect them to be on par, but they mostly are when you look at total team defenses. They had more sacks than either of these teams. They had lower passing yards per game allowed than either of these teams. And they were a little bit worse in the rushing department, and they forced about as many turnovers as the Broncos did. They forced a few less turnovers than the Seahawks. The two things, though, I would keep them off the list on were they couldn't stop the run all that well. They allowed 1,800 rushing yards and 116 rushing yards per game, and they didn't play that many great quarterbacks. They pretty much Ben Roethlisberger is probably the best quarterback they played besides Tom Brady, who they lost to. But looking at the Seahawks versus the Broncos, man, it is really close. When we talked about the Super Bowl teams, I lean towards the Seahawks, and I think that's probably where I would stay with, only again because of the revolution that put on the league as far as modern defensive philosophy and that 4-3 and how many people have tried to copy it since. It's hard to judge who really had the harder road. I mean, Drink saying the Seahawks had the harder road. Man, that Broncos squad, that defense really was carrying water. I mean, because that's one of the things you have to look at, of course, like y'all have said so far in this. When you're talking about a team, a defense, you can't just look at it in a vacuum. You got to look at who the offenses were as well, because if your offense stinks and you're on the field all the time, obviously you're not going to be playing as well as if your offense is always taking care of the ball and doing the good things and putting you in a position where you always get to play ahead. That means you can force more turnovers. That means you can rush the passer more. I would probably say the Broncos had a little more of that. A little more of the offense was starting to slack off. The defense was really having to kind of pick up the slack. But, man, it's the Legion of Boom. That I think when you look at the overall stats, like the final passing yards per game allowed, the total yards per game allowed, and the turnovers forced, I lean towards Seattle. But the margin is razor thin. And I think when you add in the narratives of the rest of the team around it and what they were able to do, the Broncos get really, really close. I don't want to be that guy that says it's a tie, so I'll go with the Seahawks. But you're talking about, if you're talking about top 10 defenses, both these teams are on there, top 10 all time, not just of the 2010s, but of all time. You're talking about teams that are probably going to be like 8th and 9th or 8th and 10th or something in all-time defenses. I think both these are going to be in there, and the margin is razor thin.